Recording. All right. Hi, everybody. At the kitchen table today, I have EJ Spurrell joining me. EJ is a author and content creator and
just general nice guy.
General nice guy from the West Coast, where everyone is a nice guy, actually.
Yeah, but not one of those pathological nice guys, you know.
No, like the genuine kind of.
Genuine, yeah,
nice,
yeah.
Nice,
we'll go with that one.
Yeah, nice island folk.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I have EJ here with me today, and to start it off, I guess we can talk a little bit about how we got to know one another, which was through internet things.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Appropriately enough, here we are talking again on the internet. But the first internet event that brought us to each other's attention was Gamergate.
Gamergate.
The infamous
Gamergate, yeah.
the many-storied and very divisive
Nuanced.
Gamergate.
I like to say nuanced, yes.
So yeah, maybe, and since you were kind of one of the main, organizers behind that meetup, Gamergate meetup in Victoria, maybe you can start off telling us a bit about that.
Well, basically, I got involved in Gamergate right from, actually about a week before it even got named, when my main focus was that I felt that the journalists were kind of covering their own asses and their own complicities.
Yep.
Yeah, and when that kind of continued on and they just kept deflecting, and they were trying to paint any criticism of their work as journalism as misogyny, which was just ridiculous. I felt really strongly about that. It was a very strange period in my life. I had just gotten custody of my daughter, and I had talked with her about all this kind of stuff, and she was on board. So it was really confusing. So when there was a little bit of a crossover there between, Gamergate or not even so much a crossover as a slight overlap between Gamergate and a lot of the things that the men's rights communities were talking about at the time.
Right. And
right.
So had you been writing opinion pieces or making kind of commentary online before that, or was that kind of what started you making content?
Well, believe it or not, when I started my YouTube channel, it was in the early half of 2014, well before any Gamergate stuff had actually started up. And one of my lifelong respects, I guess I should say, I've had a lifelong love for the idea of freedom of speech.
Right.
Right. And I felt that there were definitely some problems happening in that realm. So I made a couple of videos talking about censorship and offering criticism of social movements that I felt were just not what they were all cracked up to be. In this particular case, I was talking about the fat acceptance movement, and
okay.
Something
that sticks around today still.
Yeah. And when I first discovered that, I've been a big guy my whole life, and I was appalled by it. I was like, this is ridiculous. We're not oppressed. We eat too much, or we make poor choices in what we eat. It's not like, if anything, we take up more space than regular people. No, we're not oppressed. I'm sorry. And so I went down that road and found myself a nice little community, so that when Gamergate actually happened, it was probably just after I had made that video. And with the original, so-called Zoe post, where an ex-boyfriend of a small-scale video game developer basically did and expose all, this is how shitty my relationship was with her. She cheated on me with 4 to 5 different guys, and this is me getting that off my chest. I kind of jived with that because, something similar had happened to me in the past, right?
Right.
And I didn't get a chance to, obviously expose that to the world. But thinking back, man, would I have loved to?
Oh yeah, it's a vent of
it's Well, that was exactly what I viewed it as. The guy was venting. He probably, like, I can almost guarantee he never intended for it to become a huge, internet, hashtag movement, whatever you want to call it. But that was the catalyst. That was the so-called, assassination of Franz Ferdinand for the movement. You know what I mean? So it went to that level, and and then it just blew up, and then everybody got involved, and then about a year, it was less than a year into it, everybody decided, hey, we should start doing meetups. And I was like, that's a great idea. Yeah, I wouldn't mind meeting some other people who would, because for two reasons too. I wanted to see with my own eyes if like the characterization of these people was true, right? If they were just the basement dwelling, misogyn nerds or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, there's
right?
definitely a bit of like morbid curiosity.
Oh, for sure. And don't get me wrong, there were some people there that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but for the most part, they were all pretty decent, like well-off people who had their shit together, and hey, why not, right?
Yeah, see, that's how it was, like you said, I love that analogy, the Franz Ferdinand of the movement, because it was a little, such a small catalyst that within a year, it was like, had branched out to all these different online communities. We're talking about it, right? And even before the meetup started, it had become like a kind of in real life mainstream news piece, even if it wasn't, front page anywhere. But it was definitely getting this kind of mainstream traction that internet kind of subcultures I don't think had really had before, or at least that I've never seen.
Everybody knew about it. We didn't have the Gamergate event, whatever you want to call it, as a whole, didn't receive all that much positive press. And the places and some of the places that we did receive positive press for were not the type of places you want to receive positive press from.
No, but and that was really shocking to me too, how negative the press was, because I remember after going to that meetup, and I mean, I kind of found out about Gamergate just through YouTube channels that I followed, and not because I was really into gaming, even though I've kind of been like a low-key gamer most of my life, I guess. But anyway, and so going to the meetup and, like you said, meeting a lot of pretty down-to-earth people and learning more about it from YouTube channels that I'd been following, and seeing legitimate synopsis and commentary on it, online. And then seeing in the mainstream and in university publications that it was a hate movement, and was fueled by misogyny and by white supremacy. It was really, really extreme.
Oh yeah, well, UVic apparently did a little workshop with their sociology professor about Gamergate.
They did. That was they absolutely did, and they, if you looked it up on the UVic, I can't remember if it was their main site or their news page.
I think it was their. Yeah, I think it wasn't the Martlet. It wasn't. I'm pretty sure it was their actual course calendar based site. Yeah.
Yeah, it was described as a hate movement, and that was I don't know, to be super cliche and corny about it, that was kind of a red pill moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can only be lied about so much. And so, to be fair, a lot of these people don't understand that they're actually, it is a lie, right? Because they're looking at it through a much different lens than the people who were actually, supportive of it, right? From my perspective, it was, no different than Siskel and Ebert rating a movie. We were talking about criticism here, and saying that hey, maybe this person's attachment to their identity in creating these games is not a good a winning move for creating a good game, or attachment to not to go down this rabbit hole, but the whole neo-Marxist idea of storytelling, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and I think it was that extreme reaction that kind of that fed it, obviously, but that also brought it into closer contact with other communities, polarized communities like feminist communities and MRA communities in particular, because it was, what started as this kind of almost like lovers' quarrel in the gaming journalism community turned into this, kind of standoff. Anyway, so, and then that kind of led us into the second internet turned IRL event, screening the Red Pill documentary.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned before, there was a little bit of overlap within the men's rights or men's issues community and Gamergate. So prior to Gamergate, I had interest in men's issues because I've been through some of the issues that, some of these more, I'll say the more radical feminists, just to be fair, say doesn't exist, and that is domestic violence against men. Right. So I went through that, and that's kind of what tuned me into a Canadian charity called CAFE, Canadian Association for Equality. And these guys, honestly, are some of the nicest people on the planet. But they get a really unfair shake because their charity chooses to focus on the male side of equality.
Yeah, and one of CAFE's big initiatives has been to open men's shelters in Canada, which there are almost, I think there's one of now, actually, thanks to CAFE.
I think thanks to CAFE, there is actually one. There was one several years ago run by a man named Earl Silverman, but he ran it out of his own pocket. The government would not help him. He ran it out of his own pocket, and he went bankrupt, and literally the day after, he was forced to move out of his own personal home, by the way, that he turned into a shelter. The day after, he was found hanging in his garage. So, he killed himself, right? And so like that's just a shade of what that issue is there. So, anyways, I became really interested in that, and one of our first events was as you said, the Red Pill screening, right?
Yeah, which was kind of like has a bit of an interesting symmetry because it received the kind of same like very outrageous and skewed coverage that a lot of the Gamergate issues did, and in the same kind of tone too. Accusations of being pro-misogynist and anti-woman, and really, I mean, to watch it, it's a very measured and you could even say tame, I think, representation or presentation of the issues. So,
well, there was.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
Well, there was the question of because Cassie J was a filmmaker, and there was the criticism that she didn't do enough to challenge the men's rights movement, and fair enough, right? But that wasn't her goal. Her goal wasn't to challenge it. Her goal was to actually explore the ideas that they shared, and then show them like this is what these guys actually believe. Yeah, and she made her mandate very clear in that way too. So it wasn't like there was any kind of bait and switch. Like I felt like she was really honest in her what her goal was with the production. So, I mean, it kind of added to the unfairness of the way even Cassie J herself, who's like a very progressive filmmaker, was portrayed afterwards. Yeah. As our what's the word they use to describe Christina Hoff Sommers? A female men's supremacist or male supremacist. That's what it was. A female male supremacist, and it was like, what are you talking about? Right. She hasn't come to grips with her internalized misogyny. Yeah, pretty much. But and I actually got a chance to have a half-hour conversation with Cassie as well before the film came out, actually. And you know what? She just generally strikes me as a really just genuine individual who actually has a huge heart, and that's all it was. Yeah. Right? She cares about people who she feels are being, what's the word I want to? It's not discriminated against, but marginalized, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, or misrepresented at the least.
Misrepresented, yeah. So, anyways, so we enacted this this screening, and it took us everything. We actually ended up having to pay a lot of it out of pocket, which was regrettable because we couldn't get enough of an audience. And we heard from some people who planned to attend that would not because they were afraid of what might happen, because at this time it was when a lot of her other screenings were getting protests, and some of them were getting really intense. There was I believe it was Steve Brule was at the Ottawa screening, and he was getting stalked by a group of people.
Yeah, and Steve Brule runs a YouTube channel, I think, Studio Brule, and he hosts a lot of Janice Fiamengo's videos.
Yes, that's right too.
And I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, he's a very unthreatening, soft-spoken, even-tempered. Yeah.
He was keeping a cool head the entire time, and props to him.
Yeah. And I mean, and it was crazy because it was with the screening of the Red Pill, we went through almost every kind of cliched obstacle that you see in YouTube and videos that talk about this kind of censorship and this kind of ideological battles, I guess you'd say. We had so just to get, and you can feel free to add or to this list or correct me here.
Go ahead.
So first we had troubles finding a venue that would host us, and then once we found a venue, we had people that worked to sabotage basically our ticket system.
Well, just to explain a little bit deeper, there is we had offered the screening for free, so anybody who wanted to attend could attend for free. We weren't going to charge them 1 red cent.
Yeah.
So
totally
we wanted
open
to the public, but we did because of some of the sabotage, which I will explain. We had a local group of people that I can only identify as eco-feminists. Or at least that's what the ringleader appeared to identify as. It could have come from all over the place. I don't know. It came in and registered every empty seat in fake names. Right?
Yeah. And not just fake names, but pointed fake names.
Yeah. Some of these were names of her name escapes me right now, but there was a woman who was raped and murdered in New York City back in the 1970s. In basically with people witnessing this, and they did nothing. And this is one of the names. Other names were straight up just insulting and puerile and juvenile and just just ridiculous. So yeah.
So we had that, and then but all in all, I mean, it did go on.
Oh, it went great.
Yeah, and it went off, without a hitch, really. And it actually, had some people attend who, hopefully got something new out of it that they might not have.
I know of at least
had.
one person that I'm aware of who came in, and when she came in, she actually had a Margaret Atwood book tucked under her arm, and she had the spine out. She was showing everybody, right? She wanted people to know what she was there about, right? And it was no problems though. We let her in, it wasn't even it wasn't even a question, so she sat down, she watched the movie, and at the end of the movie, when we handled the Q&A, the first question I asked was, did anybody here find this surprising? And her arm was up in the air, the look of eagerness and surprise and shock on her face. And honestly, that one woman made it all worth it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
We had some people there from the other side of the aisle too, that were maybe a little bit too far to the right, if you know what I mean. And trying to ask the Jewish question, I was like, oh man, this is not. Come on now. Because no matter who asks it or how you answer it, it's a trap.
Oh, it's always a trap.
It's a trap.
and it's a haunt too. It's like you can't take anything from an internet message board, no matter where or what the topic, and bring it into real life without the.
You know, like it would have been better if somebody asked if traps were gay. You know.
Yeah. It would have been less awkward.
At least then somebody could have had a laugh out of it, though, right? Like, yeah. Anyways, but yeah, no, it went off without a hitch, and I think we only managed to fill about half of our seats though because of the incident with the eco-feminist group. But they didn't stop the showing. The show must go on, and we only had one other problem from them. In about a month after that, they started bombarding our Facebook page with 1-star reviews, and then just writing all this nonsense. And then I was like, what? And then I realized, I'm like, we don't have to have reviews on this page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shut the
Wait a
reviews
minute.
right off. Yeah, no.
We control this page.
Exactly. It's just like why do we even have reviews enabled? Like it's not necessary. Yeah. But so that was that. But yeah, like bringing this back to the tie-in with Gamergate. It's a very slow creep, right? Like it started with probably the men's issues, topics and whatnot. And then it went, into Gamergate, and then, the heavy metal community had something happen, right?
Right.
The wider atheist movement, even like more recently, we've got like Magic the Gathering and like tabletop gaming and comic books is a big one, right? So
those have been the kind of the most recent.
Casualties of war. You know?
Yeah, I think actually now that you mention it, I think atheism. The kind of atheist community, atheism plus, predated all
the Gamergate nonsense, and
yeah,
for sure did, because I remember that. Yeah. They were I don't know, the terminology is so loose around it. Like some people call them the new atheists, and this that, and I'm secular myself, but I've got no hatred for religion, so
I know what you mean. It's funny, it's become so like fractured, I guess, like any kind of popular movement. It kind of breaks down into smaller cliques and everything, because there's definitely a contingent of kind of thoughtful secular atheists, and then the kind of
the ones that anything that religion touches or has ever touches is evil and must be destroyed at all costs. Which is ridiculous, because like religion has had a huge influence, like a profoundly huge influence on our culture, and if you want to tear that out of that, that's like pulling the skeleton out of a living human being.
Well, and I mean,
that's dangerous.
It is, and what always kind of struck me too, as someone who grew up like fairly secular, like not ever going to church or Sunday school or anything like that. Like later on, learning just how much influence religion has in all of our history and art and philosophy, and it's like if you don't have at least some knowledge or understanding of that, you're kind of missing a big chunk of the picture on a lot of things.
And also a sense of balance, right? Because, like, of course we can name things like, the Crusades and some of the attitudes of the Catholic Church back in the day, the Inquisition, witch burnings. Those are all horrible things, right? But we also have to, like, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We also have to credit, like, the beautiful art and architecture and law, like, legal systems. Like if you look at, like, the West was pretty much predicated on Judeo-Christian, ethics, I guess, is the best way to put it, right?
Right.
And honestly, I'm looking around. We live in affluence here compared to the rest of the world. And that might be a problem too, but that doesn't change the fact that it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like, when Christopher Hitchens died, he kind of left like a vacuum that no one was able to really fill, and so you just ended up with a lot of like
Steve Shives.
Steve Shives, yeah, Steve Shives, and a lot of angry, like, fedora wearing, childish atheists. Yeah, who all wanted to be Hitchens, but who would never have the actual depth of knowledge behind their criticisms to.
See, Hitchens had a devastating intellect, and that's what it was with Hitchens, right? Like, he was on point, right?
Yeah, and he just, just his eloquence, his ability to turn a phrase and to use the language.
Articulation,
was just, like, second to none. So even when I've watched some Hitchens debates and been like, you're being an asshole, dude, I still, like, it's hard not to admire him if you don't even agree.
There's times when sometimes the best debaters have to be assholes once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, so I guess this can kind of lead us up to, I think what is probably, bar none, the biggest internet kind of phenomenon of today, which is Jordan Peterson, which has become, like, the latest thing to go from an internet sensation or internet cultural hub to, like, an in real life force that trumps everything practically that's come before it. Like,
I've never really seen something of Peterson's, how shall I put this, his explosion into notoriety.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like, I've never really seen especially an academic, like, not like sure, you got celebrities that, they were in this movie, now they're all of a sudden they're hot shit. But Peterson was the first one who's actually up there on stage telling people things they didn't want to hear and getting popular as a result of it, Yeah,
and only gaining in popularity, despite all the adversity and all of the. My dog.
It's okay, I can tell that was a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, he also is a fan of Jordan Peterson.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Is this room clean?
He does like to keep his toys organized.
Okay, good.
I'll give him that much.
All right.
But and I mean that's something that we also have both kind of been involved in. Like, I know you've seen Peterson speak on a few occasions.
Yep.
And I've been following him. I mean, it was almost like an accident that I started following Jordan Peterson right when he came out with the videos against Bill C-16.
You know what's funny is I didn't actually watch those videos until after I saw him at the free speech rally where he made that really impassioned speech about freedom of speech. And that's the moment that I was like, whoa, let me go back and watch these videos now. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah,
well, I like I said, it was almost an accident that I found that video. I think it was only like a few days after it had come out, and then and I was really, I guess, taken with Peterson, obviously, because he's such an articulate and intelligent thinker. But I also kind of was like taken aback, thinking like this is really gonna, like, this shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah.
But even I didn't really expect it to hit the fan as much as it has.
Well, that, and like I never expected it to work out honestly so well for him.
Yeah.
Right? Like sure enough, like I understand that this guy's probably under so much stress that, like, we couldn't even fathom it, right? Because he's getting hit from every direction these days. Right? Especially over the last like month or so. Like, it's like ever since he seemed to have gotten a publicist, things have just been coming faster and faster, right? So, and not just from the left either. Like, the far right's been going after him. It's like, wow.
Yeah, well, it really, absolutely. It really seems to have accelerated in the last month or so. It's so eerie in a way. It's almost uncanny because it's the same. It's like the phenomenon of Jordan Peterson seems to be following the same path as these other kind of, incidents or movements we talked about. Like, he's wildly misrepresented. Like,
Oh
I mean,
God, not even close to wildly. He is so misrepresented. It's like they may will not be hearing him.
exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I thought maybe the Kathy Newman interview, which most people will probably know what I'm talking about, since it's been viewed like 10 million times.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that, it was such an obvious attempt on her part to misrepresent what he was saying, that, and it became such a joke that I thought, it would kind of break the trend, like that it might kind of force journalists to take their task a bit more seriously and approach it with a bit more honesty. But it seems like it's only gotten worse. It seems like people have like just tried to out Kathy Newman.
Oh, just today I listened to an interview with Jordan Peterson and Philip Dodd, I guess, from the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
And basically he just seemed like Kathy Newman with a higher IQ. Honestly, he knew a little bit more about what he was talking about, at least, but like it was just a lot of the interview was spent like telling Jordan what Jordan believes, So it was like, okay, come on.
Oh, I can imagine. Like, I didn't see that one, but that's what I thought the monk debate was, basically.
Oh man, the monk debate. Honestly, you had Stephen Fry up there, and I love Stephen Fry, right? You had Stephen Fry up there. And I think he made a few like just home runs. I think Stephen Fry made some home runs up there, right?
Yeah.
And I do have my criticisms of Peterson during that debate. He kind of let the pro side guide him in what he was saying a little bit too much, and it got off topic a few times. I think that Stephen Fry was trying to do his best to keep it on topic. I think he did a pretty good job for him, right? But you could tell that the two people on the pro side, first of all, one of them might as well have not been there. I forget her first name, but Goldberg, the woman.
Yeah.
Rebecca or Sarah? I forget. I forget.
Yeah. I mean, I found her almost like disingenuous. Like she didn't even. She kind of made light of the entire topic and process the whole time. Like,
well, I think she kind of lost the plot when she encouraged the crowd to quote, and I quote, Google it. It's true. And then literally the next day I saw a video of a guy who actually did just that and was found to be like, no, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I was really, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say surprised, but I was still like pretty appalled with how personal it got against Peterson.
Well, especially from Michael Eric Dyson there, right?
Yeah.
And now I'll be honest, I've never heard of Michael Eric Dyson before this month.
No,
debate.
Neither had I.
So I don't know enough about his background to really confer a character judgment upon the man, right? But there were a few points there where like he wasn't even trying to keep on topic. His topic was attack Jordan Peterson. And
yeah, and make kind of meaningless references to Trump and the United States. And
referring to Beyonce Knowles as a great American philosopher.
Oh, I know. I just like
that was cringy.
Vomited in my mouth a bit. It was awful.
Yeah. And also the idea that people in power don't know that they have power. I mean, I'm sorry. When I had power, I knew I had power. It was that simple.
Oh yeah, I think you have to be, a bit different to not be acutely aware of any kind of authority or power that you have. Like
exactly. Because I've been in positions where I had absolute authority within a certain context, right? And if people stepped out of line, I had the authority to grab them and remove them from the premises. Well, not physically grab them, but say, get the hell out or I'm calling the cops, kind of thing, right? And that was, and I was actually I was a bouncer, right? And that was the most fun I've ever had at a job. I'm not gonna lie, but that's just it. It's like when you have power, especially power that is conferred upon you by some mystic magical privilege, I guess. Then like sure, there's going to be a common difference between, you know, me being a straight white male, which I guess a mediocre straight white male rises to such heights that it's unseen, you know, it's unheard of. But I'm still waiting for those heights myself. You know, I busted my ass the past few years. I want some payback, right?
Yeah.
But like it's the same with anything else, right? You just like it takes actually a lot of hard work to, you know, get any sort of recognition, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's just astounding to me that someone, I mean, like I said, I'd never heard of Dyson before the bunk debate either, but I mean, he's obviously a very accomplished person himself, you know, I mean, he's sharing the same podium that this, you know, privileged white Peterson has come to. So,
and condescending to him pretty much the entire debate.
Yeah, I thought it was just like, it was so, it was pointless in the end too, you know. I mean, all it did, like you said, was kind of lead Peterson off topic, and yeah, Fry really did do a good part to kind of bring it all back.
He tried to pull it back, and he delivered the best closing statement, I swear. He outright called Dyson on being a huckstery snake oil salesman, and I was like, yes. Thank you, Stephen Fry.
Yeah, that was amazing. And the look on Dyson and his debating partner, ladies'
just can't handle an educated black man.
Oh, yeah, they just looked so put off. And it was, and again, it's so disingenuous. Like, you guys have, you know, been doing your best to undermine Peterson on a personal level. Like, every opportunity you had, like
to a large degree, Fry and Goldberg didn't even need to be there.
No,
you know? it was very overshadowed by the Dyson Peterson kind of thing going on, right? And yeah, there were a few points there where like Peterson made some comments that I would not have made in that position, right? But I could sense the guy was frustrated, and you know what? And to be completely fair, I don't know that I wouldn't have made those comments in that position either.
Yeah. It's the amount of composure I think that you have to have in Peterson's position is like probably pretty demanding.
Yeah, he's got to be able to handle himself professionally, and I think he's doing an exemplary job of that, considering what's being thrown at him.
Yeah, well, this whole this controversy, I guess you could say, over this enforced monogamy comment.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I mean, if there's any better example than Kathy Newman of Peterson just being like wildly mischaracterized, it's got to be this thing from it was the New York Times.
New York Times, yeah, it was the New York Times, and basically they made it sound as though he was like encouraging state-sponsored waifus for all the little massage nerds. And that's not at all what he was saying. He was saying something that was actually a human universal that goes back through every society to the beginning of history, you know, and that is like the idea of the marriage contract. You know?
Yeah, it wasn't mandatory wives for incels. It was like.
Oh man.
I know, and it's like cartoonish, and it's so easy to clear up. Like that's so. Again, it's one of those things where it really, you know. It's a real blow to your faith in people's, or in the media's integrity, at least.
Oh, especially from the New York Times, you know, like they haven't always been the fairest, most balanced paper ever, but I mean, you expect better than that.
No, exactly, and I know that they run like I guess inflammatory or provocative opinion pieces, but like there's a difference between I think being provocative or even like intentionally kind of inflammatory and then just being like total yellow journalism. Like
yeah, it's just like let's restart the Spanish-American War. Like, you know, it just really, it's really, you know, and I don't like saying the word problematic, so I'll say troublesome.
Yeah, it's upsetting.
It's upsetting. It's upsetting because you want to have faith in humankind and your fellow your fellow people. But then you look at like who some of the biggest media providers in the world are saying, and you're like, wait a second, I know from personal experience that is completely incorrect.
Yeah.
Right. And and they're like, oh, well, that's just anecdotal. I'm like, well, it's anecdotal with about 100,000 other people. So that's not an anecdote. That's a statistic. I'm sorry, And then well, it was the same thing. What was it last year with PewDiePie? There, he dropped the N-bomb on a live stream in a moment of frustration, right? And there's a lot of psychology behind that I don't want to get into, but hey, I get it, right?
Yeah.
But they try, and then he lost his YouTube Red show. He lost all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, and there was that was at the same time or after the whole he got in trouble for doing Nazi jokes.
That was a little bit later.
Okay.
Like I think 8 months or something had passed between the Nazi joke and the. Oh, wait, are you talking about Marcus Mechan?
No. Although that's an even better example, but
that's a great example because Marcus was a nobody.
Yeah, but PewDiePie, I think he lost his Disney deal or something over the Nazi jokes. Yeah, he well, the thing is when you're at that level of a lot of your fans like edgy humor, so he was going for the edgy humor, so he decided that he was going to go on Fiverr, and Fiverr's a website where you can basically pay people $5 to provide services, right? And these two guys offered this service like, hey, we'll like be happy and wave a sign on camera for $5, right? Yeah.
Now, what made this situation probably a little bit worse? These two guys were, I believe, they were Indian, right? Like South Asian Indian.
Yeah.
And I think that made it a little bit worse. But they had them waving a sign. What was it? Something negative about Jews. I know it was that. I can't remember the exact phrase though.
Okay. Neither can I. I couldn't remember if it was a Jew phrase or if it was like a Hitler phrase, but it was.
It may have been it might have been a Hitler did nothing wrong because that was a meme,
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's distasteful. Don't get me wrong, but it's a meme. Get over it.
Exactly. There's dead baby jokes out there, like.
Oh yeah, I tell them all the time.
Perspective. Yeah, they're an acquired taste, kind of.
Exactly. I've been kicked out of a party for telling one before. So. Anyways, and then but then you had Marcus Mechan come along, and for those who are unaware, that's Count Dankula. He's the guy who wanted to annoy the hell out of his girlfriend by turning the cutest thing in her life into something horrible. So he trained him to react to the term gas the Jews, and then raise his paw to the term Sig Heil, right?
The cutest Nazi pug you ever saw.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Somebody else did that in the 1940s, and he got arrested by the Nazis, right?
I know.
And then they figured out, and then they realized, oh, well, he was only joking, and then they let him go. The Nazis let him go, right? Like,
yeah. They realized, this would actually be probably a worse PR move to pursue this than...
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It was just a bad move. And you know what? We've yet to see the full effect that's going to have now, because they decided, like, well, we can't let this guy off scot-free, so we're going to do something. So they decided after like 2 years of his life to give him an 800-pound fine. Right? Yeah,
and it's fucking outrageous that it spent 2 years in the court system. Like, that's insane enough. But
and this is where I actually have all the respect for that guy. Is he refused to pay the fine, and instead he raised 100,000. I think it was 100,000 pounds to hire a high-priced lawyer to fight the law.
Yeah. Oh, as he should.
To fight the law from its like inception. Like, no, this is wrong.
Yeah, I support that like 100%.
Oh yeah, respect. Yeah.
Yeah, because it really is outrageous. I saw a story. There's a girl. I think she is a minor. I don't think they published her name, but she was fined under the same law in the UK for posting rap lyrics to, I think, her Instagram or Facebook account.
Mm-hmm.
Like from some rapper I've never heard of before, but
was it Kendrick Lamar by any chance? Because he's in the news just recently.
no, because
Yeah.
I would have recognized, like, it was a name I'd never heard before, the
Okay.
rapper. But anyway, so she posts these lyrics, to her social media, and someone found them offensive, I guess, and reported it, and she was fined £800 as well for being grossly offensive online. Like, this is insane. Like, someone needs to put their foot down. Like,
If you see, my opinion is if you have an utterance that you don't think that anybody other than maybe your class or your group should say, don't say them. Period. Right?
yeah,
Because that's like, they always talk about this, like the difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome, right? And they say that what's wrong with equality of outcome? Well, that would be equality of outcome if if you can say it, then so can Whitey McWhiteface over here.
yeah,
Come on. Now, I think the word is distasteful in itself, and I don't say it because I find it completely distasteful. And like, let's be honest, it's purely an insulting word,
yeah,
right? But I mean, if you're gonna drop it like it's hot or whatever the hell it is the kids are doing these days, then be prepared to hear it back. Kendrick Lamar apparently pulled a girl on stage, a white girl up on stage at a recent concert, and she was singing the lyrics, and then I guess she silenced the first time that the N-word came along. Like,
right.
she stayed silent, but she got it the second time, and he stopped her and shamed her on stage in front of the entire concert for saying it.
What?
And it's just like, that's a Kafka trap, man. Like,
no shit, dude. Oh my
like,
god.
you entrapped that girl, man. You knew.
Yeah,
Right?
that is a fucked up thing to do, man. That poor
Yeah.
girl. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
So, like, that's like, I mean, obviously there's no legal repercussions that she's going to have to face, so at least there's that. But, like, sometimes the social repercussions are above and beyond what's necessary.
Oh, like, there's no proportionality whatsoever.
Well, there needs to be a context generally understood too. Like if I drop the word in reference to like somebody else saying it, right?
Yeah.
That is not the same as me going out and dropping it on the first black person I see. Like, that's not. Those two things are not comparable.
No, they're not even in the same universe.
No.
But it's like, yeah, there's no relation between like the size of the incident and the size. Like that girl with the Chinese prom dress. Like
yeah.
There's no reason that needs to be internationally discussed. Like,
no. That was not, like, that girl should still be unknown, or even the girl just recently where she wore like an AR-12 or something to her prom. Like
I saw that too.
Like the rifle,
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, she's handling it like a boss, because anybody that criticizes her, she just throws it right back at them. So, like, that's fine, right? But, like, at the same time, she didn't shoot anybody. Who the hell cares?
Exactly.
She was actually trying to do that as a show of no, I don't want to say responsible, because I don't think it's all that responsible to taking a rifle to your prom, but but to say that there is such a thing as responsible gun use, and that maybe taking guns away from everybody, including the responsible owners, is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I can,
yeah.
I can agree with that. So yeah. Not to get too much into like gun laws, because that's a freaking wasp's nest there too.
It is, and to be honest, I don't know enough about like state laws or even guns themselves to really.
Yeah, and fair enough. Neither do I, admittedly. So
yeah.
I just know that I like the concept of like, hey, if everybody's got guns, then fucking people will think twice when they try to rob you.
Oh, for sure, and I like, I like the idea of maximal personal freedom. I'm a fan of that too. And And I mean, there's a certain kind of danger, I think, in being like, arms for me but not for thee kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, but yeah, with the Count Dankula thing, though, back to that,
Back to that.
The Day of Freedom rally that they held recently. I think it was maybe going on 2 weeks ago now.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, in response to that, that was really encouraging to see.
That was nice to see in terms of the turnout that they had.
Yeah, the turnout was really, really great.
Yeah, it wasn't without its dramas, and I was really disappointed in the British media that basically called it a right-wing rally because, like, I'm on the left, I'd have been there.
Again, well, exactly. And again,
Yeah.
if you actually watched it and listened to the speakers, there was really nothing that was explicitly right-wing about it.
No.
This kind of conflation of anything that's pro-free speech with conservatism and right-wing affiliation is really bizarre to me.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you look at the original free speech protest back at Berkeley with like Mario Savio and like all that kind of stuff. Now, Mario Savio was actually a hero of mine. Right?
Really?
Like
okay. I don't know much about him, to be honest.
He made a speech that roughly goes, when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part, you can't even passively take part, you must put your bodies upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to indicate to the people who own it and to the people who run it that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. Sorry.
I like it.
That's a paraphrase, but like that's pretty much along the lines of what he said. And that quote meant like I almost got it tattooed on me. I was so like totally I'm there, right?
Right.
Like so in terms of putting an end to corruption and stuff like that, right? And it was such a left-wing kind of ideal at the time, even though really it should be a centrist idea. It should be shared by both sides, right?
Yeah.
Because but I think it really depends on what people are using free speech for. Because I've definitely seen the type of person that like cries free speech until such time as they get too much criticism, right?
Yeah,
and then they're like, no, yeah, I've definitely seen that, and I've seen that.
It's like the old you can dish it out, but you can't take it.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot among the I don't want to like specifically single out like the Nazi LARPer types, the ones that come online and be like, Hitler was awesome,
Yeah, that's no state now.
Yeah, those guys. It's like, okay, come on, guys, like you get points for trying, but like you're not quite getting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because like the whole thing is like free speech is the idea of being able to be a crackpot and have crackpot ideas and speak those crackpot ideas, have people listen to you, realize you're a crackpot, and walk the fuck away.
Yeah. I mean that's the idea anyway. But I mean, and even when I was like a teenager, it was like free speech was like anti-authority. It wasn't like a political affiliation so much. Like, like even the Right to Offend conference that happened in Vancouver a few years ago that I went to.
Yeah, that's I didn't get a chance to go to that one, but yeah.
But yeah, even the idea that being offensive is like somehow a right wing or even like a political or libertarian concept or anything like that seems so weird. Like considering that when I was a teenager, it was like everything about popular culture or edgy popular culture was about being offensive and challenging authority, like whether it was in rock music or rap or visual arts. Like it, there was nothing fascist about being offensive.
No.
And the kind of popular sentiment seemed to be anti-authoritarian, and now it seems like everyone wants to be the authority. It's a weird flip that I haven't quite figured out how to put my finger on finger on and articulate exactly.
Oh yeah, it's tough, right? Because well, it depends on the first of all, what environment is this battle happening in? Because depending on the environment, one side's going to have more power than the other, right? Like if we have this argument on a university campus forever, for instance, then obviously the power, like the power differential, is going to be in the hands of like the lefty activists, right?
Right.
But if you have this in like God's country, and you know what I mean?
And, in the middle of the prairies,
we're probably going to get a little bit of more right wing, but whether or not that's fascist right wing or if that's like Christian right wing, and there is a huge difference, it remains to be seen, right? And it depends also what kind of Christian, are they like, are we talking about Southern Baptists here who like take the Bible at, like the fundamentalists who take the Bible at the literal word?
Or are we talking Unitarians?
Unitarians who view them as symbolic, like metaphorical stories, it's like, well, which are we talking about here? Because there's huge differences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, and then, but I think a big part of the problem is that a lot of the people who are arguing, even those that go to universities, don't really realize how much power they have in that environment. So when they come out and they start seeing like, oh my God, there's all these things that aren't happening in my school because we've already solved all those problems in my schools, right? Like like the whole Me Too movement is both a good and bad example of this, right? Because arguably, fucking what happened to Harvey Weinstein? Well, that needed to go public. In my view, that needed to go public. The guy was actually like halting women's careers based on whether or not he could fucking stick his
or like do some bizarre thing like. Watch me dry myself. Like, just, but very, very upsetting predatory behavior that, I agree.
For sure.
Absolutely deserved to ruin him.
But then there were things like, there's an article that came out about Aziz Ansari, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm actually not the biggest Aziz Ansari fan, right?
No, me either.
But what was being described was a bad date.
Dude, that fucking article was like a bad diary entry.
I know. It was like, okay, so I went there, and then he started making out with me, and I was totally okay with that. But then he started kind of putting his hand up my skirt, and I wasn't okay with that. But I did absolutely nothing to indicate this.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
You got to indicate it.
It wasn't happening the way that I wanted it to happen.
Exactly.
So, I did feel a bit bad for Aziz, even though I've never been a fan, because that was just embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, God. But I mean, granted, that was, I think, what was it? Jezebel published that, I think.
What was it? It might have been.
And they are, they're like on the same level as BuzzFeed.
I feel like it wasn't Jezebel that published it, but I think they publicized it. I think it was done through it was done through like a smaller kind of like city-based blog, and it kind of went viral from there.
Right, but it's not like so-called reputable news broadcasters haven't been guilty of like things that are on the Aziz Ansari story level.
When you get journalists that are starting to act like bloggers, we have a problem.
Man, did you? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure if you've heard much of what happened in Ontario with the Conservative leader here. But he
not a whole much. I'm kind of cloistered away on my little island.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Ontario politics is like.
It's a gong show. All I remember is Rob Ford smoking crack. Like I remember that.
Everyone will remember that.
But apparently he was a good mayor. Like a lot of people tell me, like no, he was. He smoked crack, but he was a good mayor.
Yeah, people loved him, man. Honestly, it was kind of sad at the end, really. As much as it was hilarious, it was kind of like the poor guy has problems. But anyway.
Yeah.
leader of the provincial Conservatives here had a Me Too, I guess, moment, or an Aziz Ansari moment. And it was one of like our major newspapers that published the accusations.
And I think I remember this, and they were like completely unfounded. And then like he a couple of days and then came back was like, no, none of that happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was CTV actually.
Yeah.
So like a major Canadian news broadcaster published the accusations of two women from like 10 years ago. Okay. Saying that not even that he had sexually assaulted them, but that he had been kind of inappropriate with them, basically. One of them was a staffer of his, I think, so that kind of added to this, he was manipulating vulnerable female employees. But anyway, yeah, and he came out about a week later with proof, like with evidence, saying that what these girls had alleged hadn't happened, like it couldn't have happened. Like with housing records showing that in one case he didn't even live where the woman had said he lived at the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if these things maybe had happened in some form, these girls obviously weren't depicting them accurately or clearly or remembering them properly to give them, like the full benefit of the doubt. But, and I mean, I was never a fan of Patrick Brown, the provincial PC guy, but, nonetheless, like...
You got no ill will for him, though.
No, and it was really, really disturbing to see, like, CTV go ahead and publish these accusations without any kind of fact-checking, it seems,
Well, it's like when, was it BuzzFeed? Was it BuzzFeed or was it that other? It was another clickbait companies published all that stuff about, Trump's hookers pissing on Obama's bed or something. Right? And it's this is dossier. This is, and they came right on. They're like, well, we have no proof it's true, but it might be, and that's why we published it. It's like,
I know. Like, when are you running your next story on Roswell? Like, come on, guys. And like,
that's beyond Roswell. At least there's some actual people who will swear up and down that actually happened. Like,
fuck. And I think we even live in a time where, like, the piss dossier was something being discussed on, like, CNN on a nightly basis.
It's like, I'm all for holding Trump to account where it's required. Like, I don't like his views on freedom of speech, for instance. I don't like them. Right? And a lot of people think he has really strong views on it. No, he doesn't. He wanted to ban video games because he thought that was what was causing violence. Come on.
That was a serious facepalm moment.
That was like, no, and then he talks about wanting to shut down a lot of these big companies. And I get it, they're lying, but at the same time, you can't just like shut down these big news media companies. You got to reform them.
Yeah.
Right? You got to teach the journalists don't fucking lie anymore. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, that should be a thing. Don't lie. Or at least if you're going to lie, put it in big print at the top of the page that you're lying. That's what the word satire means.
Yeah. If you want to be the Onion, be the Onion.
Yeah. Oh, man. Sorry, I used to know girls smelled like an onion. We called her fake news. It just reminded me of that for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. But all right. So kind of going back a little bit, I wanted to ask you your opinion on something kind of controversial, but also maybe like noteworthy for its cringiness.
You're gonna get me in trouble, aren't you?
No, it's not. Okay, so I'm sure you're familiar with Paul Joseph Watson.
Nominally, yes.
Right, and so given the kind of last 5 years or so that we've been through with like Gamergate, Jordan Peterson, all these kind of ideological online and in real life battles, Paul Joseph Watson's assessment is that conservatism is the new counterculture. Agree or disagree?
I don't know that I do agree. No, I don't know that I do agree. I think it's actually more accurate. Like the new counterculture is the center.
Right. See.
Yeah.
I would similarly say, like, I can kind of appreciate the sentiment almost, but I think it's like he's not phrasing it properly.
Yeah, well, the thing is like I have no bones to pick with conservatives, and I have no bones to pick with liberals. What I have bones to pick with are the extremes on either end of the spectrum. Now, the thing is I'm a left of center centrist, right? And I look at the polarization. Like just recently, I saw this infographic that was showing how left and right wing senators were voting in the United States over the past 100 years, right? And you can see that like 100 years ago, there was a lot of overlap. They would actually vote the same way on a lot of topics. But then since about 2009, there hasn't been a single topic that they voted the same on.
Really?
Right, and you can actually see the infograph like separate near the bottom, and there's this big white gap right in the middle of the blue and red, and you're like, wow, you know. So that's like, and you know, and I see a lot of the continuing polarization of the two political wings, and I'm very much on Jordan Peterson's end of this, and that the left and the right need each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In order to survive. Yeah, exactly. It's about a balance. Yeah. So that's so I don't know if I quite agree with PJW. Now I find the guy entertaining as hell, right?
Right.
I loved his when he did his thing on modern art, just making fun of modern art. That was brilliant. I loved that.
Me too. That was probably my favorite Paul Jackson video.
Yeah, but I'm not, he's not somebody I go out of my way to watch, right? Because I don't find I learn anything new from him, right?
Right. I could see that. He's not. He's more of a commentator, I guess, than a
which all the
in some ways, but
yeah, and all the power to him on that in that regard. Like
absolutely, and I think he does a good job. Like people kind of give him shit for his affiliation with Infowars and Alex Jones, but I don't really, that doesn't keep me from giving Paul Joseph Watson a listen. Like even Alex Jones is entertaining. Like
he's in. I used to
take anything he says to the bank, but it's
I used to be really into Alex Jones in the mid 2000s, actually, well before anybody was calling him a Nazi.
Oh yeah, me too. I found Alex Jones like when he was doing his first documentaries, like about 9/11 and stuff,
Endgame and all that kind of stuff. That's when he was so hard against the Republican Party and like George Bush.
Yeah.
And it's like, but now he's an alt right. No, sorry, I don't buy it.
No. And they are turning the frogs gay. I know it's a meme, but it's true.
No, they're turning them androgynous, I think, is what's actually happening. So if you want to get technical,
all right.
The chemicals are changing the frog's actual sex.
Yes. Frogs are being sexually affected.
Yes, and I think also so is much of Ontario. But sorry, a little bit of British Columbia humor there.
That's all right. You can make fun of Ontario. It's so uptight compared to BC.
Yeah.
I really realized that coming back. I'm like,
like I lived in a small town that was known for its hippies here on Vancouver Island, and like honestly, right and left didn't matter up there. Like you're either a redneck or you're a hippie. There's no in between,
Yeah.
So and they were friends and they would hang out and there was no problem. It would be like we'd all go out to bush parties together and the hippies would smoke their weed and the rednecks would drink their beer and we'd like all shoot guns together. It was great.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I find. I mean, like in general, everywhere really is that. I mean, even though a lot of, I guess, this kind of culture war stuff that largely goes on online has transferred over into real life and mainstream media a lot. Like still, you talk to most people, that in the Timmy's or on the street or something.
They have
like
no idea any of this is happening.
Exactly. Nor do they really care.
Yeah.
You know?
And actually, I'm kind of jealous in some ways, right?
Sometimes I'm jealous, and sometimes I'm like afraid, because I'm like, everyone should know.
Yeah, I can feel that. I think with me is because I ended up in a career that put me in contact with the internet a lot more than I grew up with, right? So like I wasn't an internet kid. I was a rugby kid. I was
right.
and then I ended up with a job that literally involved me waiting for a phone to ring so I could actually perform my job. So I just sit there and I'd watch my Twitter feed all night, and that's how I got involved in all this. And I'm almost regretting that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes it seems so like insurmountable. You know, it's like what effect or change can any of this really do?
Yeah, and the problem is sometimes you reach out and you take a risk and you think, hey, maybe I got this idea. I'm going to share this idea, right? Because that's that happened to me a few times back especially when I was running my blog, because I would share this idea, and quite a few times the idea went so viral that I delete the post because I was like, no, they put me in charge. No. This is just the idea, guys. I don't want to take over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that happens, right? Because it's like you get in the middle, or you become the subject of an argument, and it's like, whoa, what the heck is going on, right? Like,
right. And it's like, no, it's not about me. It's supposed to be about the idea.
Oh yeah, well, I had people trying to like discredit me because I was a fantasy author. They're like, he lies. See, he's a fantasy author. I'm like, what? Like, I was trying to figure that one out.
Fuck all lies.
Yeah, he's like, he's a liar because he writes fiction, and I'm like, what? Like, I was just so lost on that one. And then you got people you don't even know who are defending you, and you're like, you don't know me. Stop this.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a lot to wrap your mind around.
Oh, it's ridiculous too.
But it also kind of brings me back to another notable Paul Joseph Watson quote, kind of, that I'm gonna kind of misquote but summarize.
All right.
Because he does a lot of commentary on what he sees as like the culture wars or whatever. But he also said in a video I saw a little while ago that, none of this commentary on either side is really going to change anything. And what the only thing that will change the tone of public discourse and culture is new art and new forms of expression, new artists, new music, new movements, and I think he's absolutely right, to be honest.
I can agree with him there. Actually, I fully agree with him there. I've been seeing a lot more art that's been coming out and kind of countering the the more extreme leftist views, and like and I actually I like it, but I also like some of the the leftist art that counters the extreme right views, and so it's like, yes, we need more of this.
Yeah.
Like political cartoons actually had a huge effect. Once we started using, they actually had a huge effect in swaying people's imaginations and understandings of things, right?
Yeah, because a really good political cartoon or kind of caricature, it kind of distills a whole bunch of judgments and viewpoints and can show them to you in one clever image. So it is. I think it's probably the most powerful, the most if used correctly. Yeah.
There's been some times where political cartoons that were only meant to be a caricature of the person became a full representation of that character. Like Lord Blackstone is a really good example, right?
Okay.
Back in the 1800s, he's the one who wrote Blackstone's Book of the Common Law, and so these days it's actually said that he wrote that it was okay to beat your wife so long as you did it with a rod no thicker than the width of your thumb, right?
Right, and that's become
never wrote that. Yeah, he never wrote that. That was actually from a political cartoon that somebody said he wrote. He had done that, and that is the myth that persisted.
Right.
right? So, and you can even feminist textbooks, they still repeat that. It's a complete farce. It's a fabrication. That never happened. It was a political cartoon that accused that of him, and that was it.
Yeah,
Right?
that
So,
just
yeah.
that replaced the actual
hmm Well, it's the same.
story. Yeah.
Well, it's like certain like art. There's power in art. There's definitely power in art and music and words and websites, even like Facebook. Like if you look at the algorithms on Facebook, right? They have an algorithm now that will detect people who have suicidal thoughts, right, and report them to
Yeah.
the police for wellness check. Now, here's the interesting thing. This just happened to me last night, not me personally, but like a friend of mine had triggered that, and the police showed up at his place before I called the police. They told me that
Wow.
there were already people there, and I was blown away. So that's a really good thing, but that's also a really bad thing if it's used in certain ways. Say you want to detect right-wing speech bubbles, right? But you're a far-left activist who's designing this software. To a
Yeah.
far left activist who's trying to detect right-wing speech bubbles, anything that's further right than him is going to be a right-wing speech bubble.
Yeah, well,
Right.
and I mean, there's already been like accusations of this, right, against
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and Twitter and I'm not Facebook to some extent too, that you know, unpro opinions that are deemed unprogressive are being censored. But you know, it's really it's not just so-called you know, right-wing or
Yeah,
conservative
this is true.
channels. Like I follow a YouTube channel called China Uncensored
Okay.
that just reports like exclusively on Chinese culture and politics and the CCP, like the Chinese Communist Party. And they've been, you know, and they have no affiliation with any American or North American, Western politics at all, right? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
just, their channel is very focused. But they've been experiencing the same kind of demonetization and censorship that a lot of these kind of, you know, right-wing channels
Mm-hmm.
complain about. So
Yeah,
it's,
it's I like. Sorry, don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying that it's just the right wing that's dealing with these issues. I've seen people. Heck, the Young Turks got knocked over last year sometime because of this whole system, right? And they're,
yeah, yeah.
you
So
know,
it's like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's almost, it's very confused in some ways, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's basically any ability to talk about anything controversial from either perspective seems to be being punished these days,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
and
that's
any,
concerning.
yeah, and any kind of, anyone who's found a way around kind of mainstream publication
hmm
is kind of being held back.
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, I guess that's probably actually the more important level to the, you know, quote unquote culture wars is independent media versus kind of like institution
Yeah,
based.
I'm a firm believer in. I'm not the hugest fan of the dead Kennedys, but some of the stuff that Jello Biafra said I completely agree with. And one of the things that he said that really stuck with me was, "Don't hate the media, become the media." Right? But
Yeah.
now we're starting to see this kind of thing where, well, you gotta be careful when becoming the media, because if you say something that, you know, Jur disagrees disagrees with in Toronto, you might have a problem. You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, or one of the other 70 something genders. Uh,
I think that's in New York City. I'm not sure if Toronto has actually codified all 70.
I wouldn't surprise me, especially with like Bill C-16 and whatnot, right? Like Human Rights Tribunal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff
Oh,
seems really scary to me. But yeah,
it
anyway.
is.
Oh,
It's terrifying, but this just happened a few days ago, or I just saw it a few days ago.
okay.
And this is kind of a funny story, maybe like kind of get near the end on. But did you see the latest Canadian human rights course to hit the news?
No.
Okay, this is a good one.
I'm concerned.
This is a good one. This is trans woman versus Muslim spa employee. So,
Okay, I've heard about this one. So she is a male to female. She still has the lower half of her body intact.
Yes.
And she went, yeah.
And she wanted to be, she wanted a Brazilian wax on a specific day, and said spa could not provide the wax that day because the only waxing employee they had on staff at the time was a Muslim woman who only took female clients, as per her religion or her cultural beliefs, right? Which, you know, fine. She's absolutely entitled to that.
Yeah, she's entitled to that.
I don't think especially as a spa employee who's dealing with people in a kind of intimate way, like you don't have to take any client you're uncomfortable with, hands down. That's my stance on the matter. But anyway, the trans woman, I guess, was really upset by this, felt like it was some kind of personal slight or insult, and has filed a human rights complaint against the spa.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out, I tell you.
It will be. It will be. That's a real head scratcher.
Yeah, because like, you know, like I'm not the biggest fan of Islam, is the best way to put it. But the idea is, like, I live across the street from a bloody mosque. I have no problem with Muslims. It's Islam. I can't jive with a lot of the ideas inherent in there, right?
Yeah, like the kind of segregation prescribed in Islam, generally, I would not subscribe to myself or recommend that other people subscribe to. But if you're already living your life like that, you're free to do so. Like, you shouldn't be forced to.
And if something like that makes you uncomfortable, let's look at this from another example. If I worked at a spa and my specialty was bikini waxes, okay,
right?
As a 300-pound dude who's 6'3" and, you know, bald and fucking got tattoos, you know, and you decide that, well, no, I refuse to let that guy, you know, get anywhere near my pubic region, and I took offense to that. Do you think that I should win that course? Like, come on now.
No, of course not. No reasonable person would think that.
No. You know, in fact, most reasonable people would look at me and be like, "You're being an idiot. What the hell, man? Like, you're a pervert." You know?
Exactly. And I mean, it's just so I can't think of the right word, but it's frivolous, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there was more than one spa in Windsor.
And there's probably some out there that has people working there that would have no problem doing what you ask.
Exactly.
Right? Penis and all.
So, I mean, the frivolousness of it is ridiculous. And the idea that, and it makes me suspect that, you know, there's probably other more personal motives behind these kinds of complaints a lot of the time. And the fact that you can be, you know, dragged through a potentially really expensive legal process over this kind of thing is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it just doesn't make sense, right? It's just why? like what's the point? What is trying to be solved from this? Is it that Muslim women have to give bikini waxes to people with penises now? Is that what's going to be solved, or is this just because let me tell you, that's not going to go very far.
Yeah.
You know,
that's been a really burning issue here in Ontario. Let me tell you.
That Muslim women should be forced to give bikini waxes to people with penises. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Top priority.
You know, it's not the fact that there's 10.6 million homeless on the bloody streets. Okay, sorry.
No.
That's not Canadian numbers. That's not. I was giving out the American numbers there. I apologize. I don't even know what the Canadian numbers are.
Well, they're probably too high. Not in
Yeah.
Ontario so much because it's cold here,
Hmm.
but
Victoria,
but
though.
yeah, the West Coast's a whole other
Victoria and
story.
Vancouver. Oh yeah, that's because we've got the mild weather, the mild winters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of Canada actually ships you their homeless.
This is actually the worst part about that is that you're not at all lying. That is
No.
completely true. This is what happened during the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Is Vancouver shipped their homeless to our city.
I always thought it was an urban legend.
It was. It's
Like,
not though.
but it's not. I
It's
know.
not. It was completely true. I was living in I was living in a small town at the time, and we got some in our small town of like 6,000 to 8,000 people. That a town that size is not set up for homeless people.
No.
Right? There's no way for them to survive on their own because there's nothing like they, at least in a city they can go dumpster diving for food, but up there there's no fun. There's nothing to dumpster dive because there's not much waste.
Yeah.
So he ended up breaking into the food bank, and like that's not cool because like the kids in the city who are starving need that.
Yeah,
like, come on
the community already depends on that.
Exactly, right? So he got run out of town real fast, and it was kind of sad like how the whole thing went down, but it is what it is, right?
True. But yeah, and then there was a story I read when I was out there about some fellas from Saskatchewan who got picked up by the RCMP for, tenting or whatever, and put on a bus to the island.
Yeah.
Courtesy of the Saskatchewan RCMP.
Yeah. Put on a bus to Victoria because I think that was during the era where we actually had a tent city issue.
Yeah.
Right? Now we still have that tent city issue, except now it's a mobile tent city.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it goes from
okay.
the location changes every week, I think, or something like that, or maybe every 4 days to a week or something like that, right? But sometimes they choose really dumbass locations. It's like that's not a good place for a bunch of crackheads. Sorry, and I'm not saying they're all crackheads, but there is a good deal of like drug abuse happening in these communities. So
There's
it's
a substantial number of tweakers.
Yeah, but it's all sorts. Like there's also people who are actually like have mental health issues and legitimately need help. Right. So, I mean, it's one of those situations. Right. But that doesn't change the fact that, when they were operating on the same location down there by our courthouse, that, the crime rate didn't rise 30% in that area during that region. And that they didn't have to completely gut the lawn because there were no toilets and all the human waste just soaked into the ground. So they actually had to tear up the entire property and put in a playground now. So I guess okay, but
maybe that's kind of like a deterrent.
Yeah. Well, it probably is. The thing is like yes, absolutely we should be helping the homeless people, right? Absolutely. And I don't want to make it sound like the city did nothing to help the homeless people because oh my god, they went out of their way. They made them so many offers.
They bent over backwards.
They bent over backwards for them, and the homeless community still refused because the best offer that was on the table is they were giving them use of a former juvenile detention facility, right? That was enough to house most of the people there, but there was a stipulation: you couldn't bring drugs in, and that was the deal breaker.
Yeah, and I mean, and with that went most of the public sympathy for them too, I think. Or a lot of the public sympathy for them, like. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things. So the city isn't bad in terms of how we take care of our own, right? It's not so bad. There's definitely more of the narcissistic me types and screw everybody else, but there's a lot of the. There's also a lot of the other end of that spectrum, which is the how should I put this? The kind of the Jungian devouring mother type, like I love you so much, let me control every aspect of your life. And it's just like, whoa, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I only want what's best for you.
That's what I saw a lot of, was people who in their, kind of their best intentions were just enabling a lot of suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of So, yeah, it's tough. But I mean, overall, the island and Victoria is really, it's a good community. I thought really like very good.
You know what? There's a lot of great people in the city. Don't get me wrong on any of that. This is a beautiful city.
But it's got some unique.
It's got some unique problems. Right now, we're going through the bike lane issue, where they're putting bike lanes on streets that actually have no need for having bike lanes.
Oh, come on. That's exactly what Victoria needs is more bike lanes. Everybody knows
certain areas I will give it, but the thing is like Dallas Road is such a wide street as it is, and now they're getting rid of all the parking along Dallas Road and replacing it with a bike lane.
Oh, that's the worst.
I've biked down that road many times. I've never once been worried about a car crashing into me or something like that. There's so much space to be biking on that road. You don't need a bike lane there.
And that was one of the biggest pleasures for me anyway. I found in Victoria was being able to drive down to Dallas Road, park,
go down to the beach,
or just sit in your car in the rain and watch the ocean. Like that in itself is a huge loss. That's terrible.
Yeah. So it's really disappointing, but what do you do, right? I'm not.
Well, do you have enough rainbow crosswalks? That's also very important.
We got, I think, 3 or 4 rainbow crosswalks, and one, and then the puzzle piece crosswalk, which is also a ridiculous waste of money. Because hold on, okay, no, my godson's autistic, so I'm all for autism awareness, okay? But at least announce that it's autism awareness, because all they did was they made these crosswalks that were puzzle pieces, and they didn't say anything about what they were about.
You know what? I didn't know. I'm going to admit that I didn't know until just this moment that that's even what they were.
Yeah, they're about autism awareness, because that's the symbol they use is the puzzle pieces stuck together, right?
Oh, right. But I never put that together. I thought it was just like an artistic kind of thing, how they had the kind of paisley one over
They could have put up. There's actually space there for them to put up a mural or at least a little plaque explaining what it's about, and they never did. And this city and their weird beautification things, actually, did you ever hear about the mystery of Broad Street?
I don't think so.
Okay, so along Broad Street in downtown Victoria, this is really cool because it gets right into esoteric kind of it almost feels like occult level stuff, but it's really cool because it's completely true. So along Broad Street in downtown Victoria, back in the day, that was where all of the kind of the hookers would hang out. I'm talking back in the the 40s, 50s, 60s, way back in the day, right? This is where all the hookers would hang out and ply their trade.
That was the stroll.
Yeah, that was the stroll, right? So in the late 90s, early 2000s, they decided they were going to do this revitalization project, right? And so they hired a bunch of local artists and metal workers and stuff like that to hey, let's revitalize the street. So they hired this poet, and he wrote a poem, and I couldn't recite the poem to you right now. It's too long, right? But the poem was all about how Broad Street used to be, and it was really dark in tone, right?
Oh, cool.
And initially, the plan is they were going to commission this poem from this poet, and then they were going to put it up on a mural. But as soon as he finished it, he said, "Here you go." They were like, "You're fired. You're done. We're not doing this." Right?
Oh no!
Because they wanted it to be, light and fluffy, have a little bit about the heritage, and it was just well, this is right.
Right.
And so the metal workers who were hired to create all the plaques for the street names that were inlaid in the street, well, they didn't like the fact that this poet got fired because they actually liked his poem, right?
Right.
And so what they did is they hid the poem in all of the plaques in Morse code.
Oh, neat.
Right? So the next time you're in Victoria, go down Broad Street, look down, and you'll see these little sticks, these little up and down kind of things, and they stand for dots and dashes, right? And you can actually translate the whole poem if you go down one side of the street and then up the other. You can translate the whole poem.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So it was really cool because I noticed it one day, and I was, fuck, that's Morse code, and I worked it out because I took a picture. I worked it out, and it said "Future Tomb," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "What is this now?" I thought I stepped some crazy like Freemason kind of like
Illuminati
conspiracy. I was like, going on? But then I found the story and I was like, oh, that's so cool. That's pretty sweet.
That is really neat.
Yeah. So that's I don't know. That's one of the cooler things about the city. Oh, we also have the Toynbee sign now.
The what now?
The Toynbee sign. How do I describe this? It's another one of those kind of weird, like esoteric. Nobody knows what it's from or how it got there, kind of thing.
Really?
But it's all over the world, in cities all over the world, especially in in the U.S. There are these little signs and made out of tile that are inlaid in the streets and on the sides of bridges and stuff like that, that say like these really strange phrases. Like, let me just Google one real quick here. Toynbee tiles.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm going to have to Google this.
Yeah. So Toynbee idea in Kubrick's 2001 Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter. So they're really like, what the hell is happening? Like, what is this all about? Right? But a buddy of mine, he's a photographer, and he found one on the Galloping Goose Trail. And I was like, what? And it's probably not. Way. Yeah, it's probably not like part of the initial thing. It's probably just done as an homage, but still, it's kind of cool,
That is. That is very cool.
So there are all these really just completely esoteric, very cryptic messages that are just left in public locations all around, the United States, and I guess some in Britain too. Maybe it's hard to say, but it's all over the place. They're all over the place. So it
reminds me a little bit of the Georgia Guidestones.
That's kind of creepy mythology. Too.
Yeah, which I always thought was, a little campy almost. But...
Yeah, it's a little far-fetched. I think that was just a rich guy decided he wanted to donate and make something like that because those were what he believed the world should be about. That's about it as far as that got. It's hard to say. I don't know where they came from, so.
No, but well, Ottawa is very different from Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, it's like there's definitely a sense of Canadiana, I find that carries across the whole country, but
of course.
At the same time, there's definitely like a East and West Coast divide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, how long have we been going for now?
I think we're definitely over the hour mark. We should probably wrap it up. But it's been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no worries.
If there's anything that is happening around Victoria or that you're involved in the next little while, any plugs you want to put out for yourself or anybody else?
Nothing. I don't know. Buy my book. That's like 10 years old. EJ Spurrell. It's called Children of the Halo. You can find it on Amazon. Give that a shot. It's campy, freaking fantasy, but some people like it.
Hey, I am a big fantasy genre fan.
There you go.
I always recommend people read more fantasy books.
Yeah.
Are any plans for any future stories coming down the pipe?
Yeah. I'm about halfway done my next book, but I don't expect that will be out in any time, and I haven't fully decided on the title yet, so I can't really tell anybody about it. But there is another book in the works. Cool. I am planning to make a comeback to YouTube over the next few months with a decidedly different platform, right? It's going to be more professional in appearance because I actually have a partner involved in this project who's got like years of experience making like corporate training videos and things of that nature.
Okay.
Right.
So some added production value.
Some actually really good production value.
Awesome.
We're talking about possibly setting it up kind of like a Joe Rogan style talk show. So.
Cool. Well, keep me posted on anything like that, and we will totally plug it on Freethinkradio all the time.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, EJ, and we'll maybe talk to you again soon.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Cheers.
All right.